Bursky, a little bit peculiar. I think you know Herman.
I've met Herman.
A little bit odd. He's a world traveler. He happened to be an unfortunate situation, one of the Iranian hostages.
Sure.
And they kept him over there for, I think it was, 15 months. Mm-hmm. When they finally let him go, Herman stayed over there a couple extra days so he could see the city.
George has become a regular on the Letterman show, but not every comic that Morton sees makes it to the show.
For every comic we find, we must look at least 70, 75 comics. At least. I mean, 1 out of 75, 1 out of 100 is about, it's real tough. I mean, we get hundreds of videotapes every month.
The first joke is about my mom.
For Morton, a stand-up comic has got to have more than just good material to be successful. He sees a quality in George Miller that works with an audience.
George is likable. I mean, that's the key. I mean, George gets on stage, you feel like he's an old friend. There he is wearing his comfortable sweater, and he looks, you know, like a guy that lives next door, which is the biggest asset a comic can have, being likable.
Robert Morton isn't the only one who thinks George Miller is likable.
He's always been well-liked, as far as I know. You know, nobody's going to say anything bad to your mother about you.
George Miller grew up in Seattle. His mother remembers him as shy but funny.
Yes, he always had a kind of a dry, sardonic type wit.
We're not a close-knit family. For my dad's funeral, my mom and I left early to beat the rush.
Yeah, especially makes fun of me. I should get a royalty on every performance.
It's funny the stuff you remember. Now, I grew up here, right over on 52nd and U Way, and it's funny stuff you remember when you're a little kid. And I know you heard this expression before. I first heard it when I was a little kid. Somebody said, "I want something." And my mom says, "People in hell want ice water, but they're not getting it either." I got confused. I thought hell must be like Denny's. It's hard to get ice water.
For George Miller, Seattle holds many memories of his youth.
I remember going out to the ball game at 6 Seattle Stadium, and of course the Seattle Rainiers are gone now. Right around here we've got the Queen Villa, which is the first place I ever lived after I moved away from home. It's been torn down. The Puget Sound News Company, where I worked for a while, that's gone. And the American Can Company, where I worked for several years off and on while I was going to school, that's also gone. So it's really nice to be back home.
There's at least one Seattle place in George Miller's past that does remain, although it too is slated for demolition. This is the 211 Club, a place where George Miller practiced his first vocational choice, as a pool hustler.
I think his first love was pool. If he could have made a good living playing pool, he would never have gone into show business.
But George found out that as far as his mother was concerned, anything was better than hustling pool.
She always really hated me to be playing pool. She just said, "What am I going to tell people? You just play pool, you hustle around like that." And so then when I always tell this story, it's basically true that when I first started working then over at the Colony Club, my first comedian job, I said, "I don't think I'll be playing pool as much anymore." And she said, "Well, what are you going to be doing?" And I said, "I'll be telling dirty stories to drunk people in dark rooms," and she was very happy.
In those early days, Seattle was not the best place to be for a young comic just getting started.
There were not many places for a comic to work. I had worked at the old Colony Club, and I had talked to Mort Saul up here, and he said, "There's no comedians up here." And I said, "Right, it was just, it was me and him, and I'd only been doing it about a day, you know." So mostly I left Seattle because there weren't any more places after the Colony Club to develop my skills.
And so George Miller packed up and headed for Hollywood.
Hooray for Hollywood, that's gooey bally-hooly Hollywood, where any office boy or young mechanic can be a panic with just the...
George would go to the Comedy Store in West Hollywood to work on his act, and to meet other comics, like his old friend Johnny Witherspoon.
Oh, we're going to have a fine show. We're two washed-up comics, but we still hang in, and we're going to be rich.
Oh, the Comedy Store is unbelievable. I've met all the people, all my friends, any girlfriend I've ever known, all at the Comedy Store. If I got good, it's because of the Comedy Store. It's unbelievable. It's probably had the most impact of almost anything in my life is the Comedy Store.
The Comedy Store is also special for another of George Miller's old friends.
I felt very lucky because in those days I'd get to spend my evenings with who I thought to be the funniest people in America, and it was always entertaining. The comedians were always stories about who was doing what and what was going on here, and somebody's doing somebody else's joke, and it was like a social club. You'd go on and you'd test out your material, and you'd get off stage and talk about it with some of the other people. Then the people that you really liked their work, you could watch them work.
Any kind of car trouble. I had a motorcycle for a while, then I sold it to a motorcycle gang. They gave me $3 plus a savage beating.
I guess the real world would look at you as not being very productive, because we were hanging out in a bar is what it amounts to. But on the other hand, we were also, putting together how we would make a living.
David Letterman and George Miller met at the Comedy Store and have been close friends ever since.
George knows things about me that nobody else knows, and I know things about George which I've reported to the police. And
David Letterman once introduced me on his show. He said, George Miller looks like the kind of a guy who sits next to a stranger on a bus and says, hey, are you going to finish that sandwich?
He and I can compare notes and share details of our experiences in comedy and show business, and it's just progressed that way through the years. And I feel, with George, completely comfortable with him. But he's nuts. I mean, there's no getting around that. He's gone.
There's a lot of rumors about Letterman. I don't think the rumor is true that just before he makes love, he always says, let's get on with it, shall we? And after it's over, that was Paul Schaefer in the band. I don't think that's true, but...
Letterman gets laughs on his show with the help of writers and a supporting cast. But he knows how different it is for a comic who plays the comedy club circuit.
When a guy goes out on the road or a woman goes out on the road, he or she only has one person to rely on, and that's George, or that's Elaine Boozler, or that's Jay Leno, or Tom Dreesen, or whoever is doing it. If I screw it up, I've got no excuse, because I've got endless resources compared to what a stand-up comedian on the road has.
T-shirt. Do you ever watch Cheers, Olaf?
Are you crazy?
The Letterman Show is big business, a part of the giant NBC network. The business of a stand-up comic is more like a cottage industry. This is George's accountant. Every month, George sends the receipts and statements up to Seattle, and every month, George's mother makes sure the bills are paid. This is Beverly Hills, home of the rich and famous. This is Hollywood, playground of the tourist. And this is almost fashionable West Hollywood, where George Miller lives when he's in town. Here in his combined corporate office and apartment.
This is MJ. I'm calling you from MJ Management in Los Angeles. And we have a celebrity comedian coming into your area next week to open a new club in Atlanta. Who do we speak to regarding a possible on-air interview with him?
This is MJ, George's girlfriend, agent, manager, and PR coordinator.
And she just does everything like that. And of course that releases me for the creative process.
What we're going to be doing is...
While George Miller is busy thinking up jokes, MJ is making sure George is a celebrity.
To stop over sometime. Now, what time is Mike on from when to when?
Because the more widely George Miller's name is known, the more she can ask for his fee.
We got the price jacked way up compared to what I was just going in like any other comic. And because I had been told when I started doing clubs, I had some friends who said, well, you just go in for the average amount, and then you jack up the price a couple $100, so forth and so on. That's not really the way to do it if you have a lot of TV credits like I did. I was just stupid to do that. So we'll just go into the town and get a lot of PR and draw more people and maybe sell out the place, hopefully.
But that means setting up interviews, sending out press kits, and even updating the necessary celebrity photo.